over 16 years, 8 bands, for what I got out of playing the way I did and who I was, it was worth it. I don't regret any of them. The things that I wasn't sort of natural at was sort of professionalism all the time. And Eddie sort of instilled that confidence in me as a captain. Like, we're playing international sport. Stop tiptoeing around it. Don't worry about offending people because you want to win. I think the most sort of humbling one was where I had to ring my mum and dad and ask my mum for like 50 quid, or it might have been 100 quid. Can you send some money because my boots had broken? And I felt like ashamed. I used to steal shit. I robbed Worcester Rugby Club of their sort of toilet roll, stuck out like dog's balls.
Hello everybody and a warm welcome then to In The Zone, brought to you by Gambling Zone, your trusted online gambling comparison site. You can see all the best football offers incidentally at gamblingzone.com/UK/betting, and you can find all the episodes on Spotify and on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts from. My name's Manish Bhasin. In this series, I talk to some of the biggest names in sport, looking and discussing at the successes, the challenges that they faced in becoming the very best in their field. My special guest today is a former rugby union player. In fact, he captained England during a really, really positive spell. He won not only the Six Nations twice, he also won the Grand Slam as well. The most capped hooker for England as well, 97 caps to his name. But I hasten to add, he made 1 or 2 headlines along the way. He's smiling right alongside me. He is Dylan Hartley. Dylan, how are you?
Fantastic. With every intro that I get is all that good stuff, and then you've got to sort of follow it up with the other stuff as well, which is just fine.
But that's part of the Dylan story though, isn't it?
Yeah, added a few chapters to the book, made it interesting. Certainly wasn't vanilla by any way. So that made it interesting. Thanks for having me.
Hey, pleasure. It's great to have you on.
Looking forward to speaking, and thanks for getting me out of the house.
Yeah, because you've got a newborn in there.
Yeah, third child, thriving, or I don't know about thriving, but just I'm in the chaos at the minute, surviving in the chaos. So yeah, good to be here. Thanks.
And on half term from the new school job.
Yeah, which means all the kids are at home, so my poor wife's dealing with all the kids as well, whilst I'm down here in London chatting to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, good to have a little break. I think it's one of those things where I kind of work from home a lot, and it's trying to, for me, being out and about is the best place to work. Is when I work from home, I can't have the kids around because you're trying to mix the two and it just doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Nah. No. So my missus literally just kicks me out of the house most days. But yeah.
Well, look, we'll get into the family life and where you're at. But I love to go into the backstory of an individual. So obviously born in New Zealand. So how do you look back at your early years?
Well, if we're going to tie it to rugby as well, and why I ended up here talking to you, kind of 20 years later, is born and bred Kiwi. My mother's English, so she immigrated to New Zealand. So I've always had my British passport, and grew up loving rugby. Like I literally dreamed about playing rugby. You talk about like what's your dreams. As a kid, I just wanted to be a professional rugby player.
Wow.
I wanted to be an All Black. It was never going to happen. And I think the writing was on the wall when I was 15, 16. And look, I was a good player. I was in and around the sort of representative teams, but not reaching the lofty heights that where I wanted. I wasn't getting that national selection, which is what I wanted, and teammates of my own were. So I was down the pecking order, and I think it was quite a bold thing at 16. I just thought, I'm not going to cut it here. I've got an English passport. I'm going to go to England and give it a crack. And I tied it in with like a school gap year. So I did an informal gap year, stayed with relatives over here, took my rugby boots, and at 16, I arrived here. First time being on a plane, first time out of New Zealand, travelled by myself, landed here, went to school, and then, 22 years later, I'm still here.
That's quite a brave move, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I was brought up in sort of rural New Zealand, so I was kind of, I don't know, I felt mature at 16. Like every day we used to catch a bus just under 2 hours to school, hour 45 into school. So I was used to sort of that. I was used to doing sort of work on the farm at home. I don't know, I just feel like we were pretty resilient sort of kids. And at 16, I felt like I was a grown man. You think you're mature enough to do it. But I look at 16-year-olds or my 16-year-old self now and think you're still a kid. But I had enough in me to think, go for it. My parents paid for my ticket, which I'm very thankful for. And then within a year of being here, I kind of got picked up in the system. And I think it was down to being, I was competent, I was good enough. But it's like a northerner being down south, like I stuck out like dog's balls, like a Kiwi, barefoot sort of Kiwi.
Yeah.
My attitude and the way I played the game, the environment I'd come from, I stood out. My accent, just my competitive sort of nature. I was a product of, 10 years of playing rugby in New Zealand. So I just stood out. And I think that's where I got my opportunity. And then I got good coaching, got my breaks off the back of it. And it was right in 2003 when Johnny had kicked that World Cup winning goal.
Yeah.
There's big investment into these academies. We all know about the academies, but they weren't always there. So a whole lot of money got pumped in. These national training camps were put on by England, and I was on that sort of upward curve, basically, of the guinea pigs of that academy sort of generation. So I was one of the first. Myself, James Haskell, guys like that, Danny Kerr, we all sort of came through together. So got good investment, good coaching, got my opportunity, and then just made the most of it.
And that was Worcester Academy?
Yeah, went to Worcester.
Where you started. You were there for a year?
2 years.
Just over, yeah. What did you learn in your time there?
Yeah, fantastic place. Worcester were just a championship club at the time. They're coming back. They went into administration, unfortunately, and folded. But Worcester, over the last sort of 15 years, have flipped back and forth between Premiership, relegation, promotion. But at the time, they'd never been promoted. So they were just sort of like a low-key championship grassroots club. And it was the best thing for me because it wasn't up here. And all the kids I was competing against were at these, at Bath, at, Gloucester. But I was still competing against them. And I suppose it gave me a bit of a chip on my shoulder that when I went to these camps, these guys were being paid 3 times, 4 times what I was getting paid. And when I was at Worcester, I remember this, I got paid $4,000 a year, which is 333 quid a month. I had to pay 250 on my rent, which left me with 83 quid a month, which was like 20 quid a week basically to live off. And at 17, I was living by myself at 17, 18, those 2 years. It just taught me how to be resourceful, taught me to be thrifty. I worked, I collected glasses because I was only 17. I couldn't pour pints, so I collected glasses in a nightclub till sort of 2 a.m. Got up to go training at 7 o'clock. So that didn't last long.
Yeah.
I pamphleted. I walked the streets of Worcester pamphleting. I used to do like odd jobs, filling skips and just loads of random stuff. But it taught me to be resourceful.
Did you ever feel like jacking it in when you were thinking, how am I surviving on 20 quid?
Yeah, it was days before like Skype and Zoom. So I used to pick up like pennies and 5, 10p on the floor. I picked it up because you could buy a 6-pack of eggs for, I don't know, cheap ones, maybe £1.20 or something back then.
Yeah.
But there's days before phones and that and Wi-Fi. So you had dial-up internet. So my only sort of comms with my parents was the odd email. And if I got some coins, I'd go to the phone box and I'd put some coins in, and I'd ring mum and dad and check in every sort of 6 weeks or something. And they thought I was playing professional rugby, right? Because I technically was.
You were, yeah.
But I think the most sort of humbling one was where I had to ring my mum and dad and ask my mum for like 50 quid, or it might have been 100 quid. Can you send some money? Because my boots had broken. And I felt like ashamed because I was this professional rugby player abroad. I was 17, 18 years old, a man living by myself. But my pride had to ring mummy and ask for 50 to 100 quid. And in those days, that was like $300. And when you convert currency, it was 3 to 1. There's a lot of money. And my parents, they don't have a lot of money. So I felt like embarrassed. And I think these are all the things, though, that gave me the chip on my shoulder and the drive to never feel like that. And it was too dramatic, but like being poor, like not having anything. I used to walk everywhere. I used to catch the bus. I used to steal shit. I robbed Worcester Rugby Club of their sort of toilet roll. They had a catering facility, and it wasn't just me. There's about a dozen of us, the dirty dozen lost boys. But you'd go into the catering facility, and a couple of pints of milk, bit of ham off the bone, because they had conferences there. And I remember like these little, these real pretty sort of cheesecakes on individual little plates. So all those things. Eggs used to come home, and just thrifty, resourceful. Learn how to make money. Any kit I saw lying around that went on eBay. I didn't steal kit, but if anything was left lying around from the first team, that might have ended up on eBay. And then these are the days as well when England was sponsored by Nike. Geez, I'm telling you all, I'm confessing everything now.
Yeah.
So England was sponsored by Nike, and I was playing England under 19s and 21s. So in those sort of few years there, you couldn't buy team kit then. Like now they've coined it, right? You can buy the same stuff that the guys warm up in. You can buy match shirts, the replicas. But back then you couldn't buy like match socks, training kit. And it's when Nike, do you remember the new school? It was 2002-3, where they wore the tight tops.
Yeah.
And it was like space age stuff.
Yeah.
And people couldn't wait to get their hands on it. So England 19s, 21s, we had all this training kit, and you turn up for a game, you get match socks, shorts. I would always keep my previous match socks and shorts and wear them. So I wore them like 4 games for Six Nations. I wear them 5 games in a row, and I'd always keep the socks in the packet with the labels on. And you could sell them with BNWT, brand new with tags, and people would pay 80 quid for a pair of socks and shorts. And then you get to the end of a campaign, a suitcase would go for like 250, 300 quid. So that, I remember my year at Worcester, I had $4,000. My eBay account was like $4,000. So I doubled my salary. So it was good. Like it taught me a lot, and it gave me the drive to earn. And then, so I earned $4,000 from Worcester, $4,000 off my eBay. Incredibly resourceful. And then I went to Northampton. So I approached Northampton and said, can I come here? They said, of course. I basically did their recruitment for them. I wanted to train with the first team, whereas Worcester wouldn't let me train with the first team. We were like the academy on pitch 10 on the farm on the other side of the training ground. And I was talking to all the other guys in the England squads. They were training with the first team, and they were kind of getting a little bit of Premiership exposure, game time. And I was just still training with the academy. So I kind of said to Northampton, can I come here? I want to get
So you knocked on their door rather than them coming to you?
Yeah. And is it, when I look back at my life, I asked to come to England. I asked to go to Northampton. I asked to go to Dubai. If you don't ask, you don't get. If you put it out there, you can kind of generate stuff, I go to Northampton, right? And they give me £8,000. They give me a free house. They gave me free boots, free trainers. They gave me a meat pack once a week. So the butcher's sort of vat packed sort of meat.
Yeah, a little selection.
And a box of fruit and veg. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I had 666 quid a month coming in, but I didn't have to spend it. because I'd learned all those things. And
It's like Eddie Murphy from Trading Places.
I'm going to have to watch that.
Oh, you have to.
You are 10 years older than me.
It is.
You look 10 years younger than me. But
no, it's a classic, but it's a rags to riches almost. He's not quite sure how to deal with this newfound wealth, which is obviously everything's in context. Because suddenly you've just come across, all this stuff given to you, having had to barter on eBay or sell it on eBay.
But it's great. Like, I remember just walking down to the post office after training and posting my stuff and walking back up. There's this hill in Worcester. I hated the hill. When I felt flush, I'd catch the bus. But I think when I got to Northampton, I was 19 years old, so I'd cut my teeth, doing all those things that we just talked about. And I turn up at Northampton and I got all that given to me. And I'm in the academy again with a promise of training with the first team. So that's all cool. But all the other guys that are in the academy with me, and these all friends I still talk to now, they just left school. So, I'd been out in the wild, in the real world, living. And I think that sort of certainly set me apart from a lot of the guys. Not all of them. There's some other sort of pretty resilient, resourceful, driven guys. But I was dealing with schoolboys where I felt like I was a grown man at 19. And then I got my opportunity, played the first game of the season, and away I went.
This is so interesting because it feels like those foundations are being put in place almost like brick by brick. As a youngster in New Zealand, the traits of maturity, the traits of leadership, thriftiness, it shows you and shows us why you are captaincy material in many respects, because at 23, you're one of the youngest captains around.
It was, youngest in the Premiership.
Yeah, in the Premiership.
Yeah.
For you, it felt like a natural role, I'm assuming. I mean, did you feel something that came naturally to you to be a leader of men?
A leader of men is a different thing. Like, because at 23, you're not really.
Yeah. So how do you bridge that? How do you address the senior players? How do you make sure you're not stepping on toes?
Yeah, it was very difficult. So Bruce Rehana was the captain before me at Northampton, and he signed my ball when I was 10 years old. It's like an absolute club legend. And I don't know, I think leadership comes naturally in the roles that come naturally to me. So just turning up, applying myself, being diligent. I was not always diligent, but training hard. As soon as you're on the field, you go hard, you rip in, that sort of thing. The things that I wasn't sort of natural at was sort of professionalism all the time. You got to learn that. It's a skill. Recovery and preparation, it's a skill. Analysis, all these things. Being a 24/7 professional, that comes with time. The articulation, the speaking part, all of a sudden you're plonked, stand in front of the room and speak to 50 people, playing squad, 100 staff. Sometimes it's like that was difficult at the start. And I think the thing that carried me through was just being self-aware and watching other people do it and trying to learn, trying to magpie. Like we all do, whether it's, so Phil Dowson, who's Saints DOR now, he was my vice captain, but I always admired how he spoke and how articulate he was. And I went around his house one day, he invited me for dinner, and then I realised why, because his TV was about this big and he had a bookshelf. I was like, this guy's so smart because he reads books. And then I started reading more self-help books, like How to Make Friends and Influence People. I've never read that, but type of book,
like that,
body language and things like this. So I was actually interested in that sort of self-development. But yeah, I think just watching other people and then understanding that I couldn't do it all by myself. And we played with an Argentinian guy called Nacho, Fernandez Lobe, not as famous as his brother who played... He's way better player. But Nacho,
if he's watching or listening,
we can send him a clip of it. But Nacho was just old school, like didn't even do his laces up for training. If you teased him, he'd just walk off the field. But he was brilliant, and I'd say to him, I think the hardest thing as captain is speaking. So huddles, preparing the team all week, your voice is always final, and thinking you've always got to speak was really difficult. So, and going to a game, I wasn't worried about the game. You'd be worried about what are the key messages. But as I got to like 30, 32, 33, missed out 31, those years, that stuff is like bread and butter. I had it down packed by then because I knew just to focus on 2 or 3 key messages. And those key messages are what were talked about from Monday, Tuesday, all the way through. So it was easy. It was just reminders. But at 23, I didn't know or have these tools on how to talk to the team. So I'd use people. I'd say, Nacho, can you do the team talk today? Because then it's not authentic, and you can't use your energy and your voice all the time. It dilutes it. So
delegating was another thing.
Yeah, and then I got to a point where I was quite comfortable in my own skin at Northampton because I did it for 8 years. We'd finish a session, a few people would, you'd all come together and everyone just automatically looks to you and it's like, I'm sick of this. So I'd sometimes just sit there in silence and just look at everyone else and just be like, why is everyone looking at me? And I'd wait. And it's the hardest thing is waiting for that void to be filled. And it's almost like leaving the void so someone else takes it. And then someone would speak and I'd go up to them afterwards and go, thanks for that. And then encourage more people to do it. So the things I was natural at, just playing, going hard, trying to be a good person, a good team man, trying to be socially connected with most, or just everyone, having something with everyone in the team. That came sort of naturally. But then the speaking and running of a team, I learned that over time, and using other people was key to it.
14 seasons at Northampton, and you helped build them up, right? Because I think they were relegated in your first season there.
Yeah, I contributed
into the
relegation.
into the championship.
I've been at Worcester in the where we'd been in the champs. So I was like, we need to go down there and have a look.
Yeah, but obviously you helped them to their first Premiership title in over a decade, and you'd had a few bumps along the way, semi-finals of the Premiership, and obviously I think the Heineken Cup as well would have been a big learning lesson. But you overcame these challenges, but it wasn't as we all know, it's not a straight line to success. But you put Northampton back on the map, and as a club, as a town, it's become your spiritual home.
Very much so, yeah. My tummy's rumbling. Don't know if that's come through. Yeah, it's really, so the club had never won a Premiership, and we managed to do it in 2014, so 10 years ago. But it's a really good sort of, and use this with kids, right? It's like we just didn't get there overnight. It was almost like a 7 or 8 year plan. We'd been relegated, so we'd been down to the Championship. We got promoted back up. Then we survived our first season in the league, might have come 8th or 7th, mid-table, really good. And then we started to really kick on. We made our semis the next, and we lost like 4 semi-finals in a row. And then you get to a final for the first time in the club's history, by the way. We go to Twickenham and 140 years of history. And then I fuck it up on the day and get a red card. And then the following year we go back and we win. So the story of like that one photo that you've got of lifting a trophy, it's like, it's not even a season worth of work. It's for the spine of the team. And we'd all grown together. We'd all been 20, 21 in the Championship. And then, the maturity of the team. And I think heartache and that loss and experience sort of spurred us on to finally do it. And I think the ultimate feeling of when that whistle goes and you've won, you've come out, it's relief. It's, it's not all been a waste of your time and effort, because it's hard to keep going back to the well year on year. 4 semi-finals, 1 final. So, and we lost the Heineken Cup final in that process as well. There's a lot of, you just think, why don't we just come mid-table and we could be on holiday now?
Yeah.
But you go into that sort of realm of quarters and semi-finals, you think we've come this far, we've got to do it. And I think it's relief, which was the ultimate sort of feeling when we got there. And it felt like I could close the book on that one. We also topped the league the next year, which was good. And then we don't win it, and it's a bit like all that effort again.
Yeah.
So it's hard to keep doing it. So anyone that does it, like over, you talk about Chicago Bulls, Dallas Cowboys, All Blacks, people that have done it repeatedly over and over again, it's mightily impressive. It's And I'm not saying we did. We won it once.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. The secret is keep it going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, success at Northampton means you gained recognition at international level. So, I mentioned already being the most capped hooker, 97 caps in all. The captaincy for that 3-year spell brought you into the limelight. Now, Eddie Jones.
I was in the shadows for a bit.
Yeah.
I had to fight
I'm
for
not
the
saying,
light. Yeah.
I'm not saying you weren't there. I mean, you were there. But obviously, when Dylan Hartley's named captain, it caught one or two by surprise. But
Caught everyone by surprise.
yeah. So, first of all, tell me, what was that conversation like when Eddie Jones gives you the captaincy?
Yeah, sorry, just to cover it. It's funny how we look back, and I look back at my career now like with fondness. But at the time of that captain announcement, I was banned. I'd been banned for the Rugby World Cup. I'd missed out on the Rugby World Cup in England, and I'd been banned. I wasn't the most popular player. I was almost a pantomime villain, and I accepted that. I knew what I was. I'd made a rod for my own back. So when I'd got that announcement, it was, and I compared it to other people. Again, the chip on the shoulder thing. There's got to be a better way of saying chip on the shoulder. Sounds so negative.
Can I just
It's
say,
like my driver, though.
yeah, it's motivation. But the chip on the shoulder thing, can I just rewind the clock to maybe being a 14-year-old Dylan Hartley who
12-year-old.
or 12-year-old who can't get through into the pro system in New Zealand? Did it start there?
Yeah, so at 12, I'd grown up in a rural community, went to a really small school, like barefoot country school. And at 10, I went into the inner city sort of intermediate school where you do the middle school before high school. And I was sort of big fish at the local school. I'd played rugby. I was good on the backfields every lunchtime. Then I go to middle school and I wasn't the big kid anymore. And I remember trialling for the first 15 at Kaitau Intermediate. And I didn't make it. And there's only like 4 people that didn't make it. They can't take everyone, right? And I remember afterwards thinking, the coach said to me, I don't know who the coach was, but he said to me, he goes, "You're not fit enough." And I think it's a really sort of smart way of communicating with a kid. I was a fat little bugger. And he just said, he could have said that, or he could have lied to me, but he said, "You're not fit enough." And then at 12, 13, I started running. I started going on like 1.5 kilometers or 2K runs. And I think just that sort of feedback that I got was so, and the way it registered with me is like, I need to get fitter. And the only way I knew about fitness, there's no YouTube or Instagram or anything to tell you how to get fit. It was like my dad's mate said, you got to just go for runs, get the foundations down. And so I just started going for runs. And I think the response there was really good. Because if he had said, "You're too fat," or "You're not good enough," I would have just gone home. And I remember like crying at like 12, didn't make the team. And my pride was dented. But I think there was quite formative in the fact that I got some feedback and then thought, what can I do about it? Not fit enough, get fitter, go for runs. And I remember doing things like, same bloke who, you got to have honey sandwiches, Dilly. You got to have some honey sandwiches before you play. So then I was starting when I was like 14, 15. Before games, I'd have eggs, normal breakfast at home, but then I'd make like these call it white death, like white bread, white death sandwiches of like butter with honey in them. And I'd eat those sort of an hour before a game. And I don't know if that works, but it's like carbs, sugar.
Yeah.
Probably the same as having one of those gels or a Lucozade. But at 13, 14, 15, going for runs, started making like my honey sandwiches. I had the sort of tools. I was trying to be professional. I was trying to give myself a chance, So that sort of carried me through.
But it's self-help, right? It's all self-help.
Yeah.
But
I was open. I was open to sort of listening to people and whatnot.
So that's the chip on the shoulder. And to fast forward to when Eddie Jones gave you the captaincy, you were just saying.
Yeah. So he comes down. I have a meeting with him, and I'd played 70 games for England at this point, which is a good sort of slog. And I thought there's a couple of things he could be asking me down for breakfast for. One, he wanted to ask me about the environment. Why has it been good? Why has it been bad? Tell me, a bit of a fact-finding knowledge share type thing. And there might have been a bit of a lifeline there. 2, I thought he might be retiring me. because that happens when a new manager comes in, and I think out of respect, Stuart Lancaster did it with a few guys. They kind of get put out to pasture. I thought it could have been that. I never thought it would have been, would you captain the side? Because I'd been banned at home, missed the whole Rugby World Cup. So this is my next interaction with an England camp, was come meet Eddie Jones. And he just said, I want you to captain the team. Just for the opening Six Nations. He goes, you're a shit player, mate. But I like your competitive edge, and I like the way you are with the players. And I don't know why he had said that, because he hadn't seen me with other players. But he'd obviously done a bit of homework and talked to a few people and said, we need someone to bring the group together. He just said, I want you to do it. And I did it. And he said, athletically, you're not very good. We can make you a bit fitter. And I do actually look at myself physically from where I first started the campaign to year 3. I shaped up quite well, but I had to work incredibly hard. And he kept the sort of metaphorical sort of foot on the throat there on me. And he said things like, you've played a lot of rugby, but what have you done for England? You've got an opportunity. You've just had your first child. What sort of legacy do you want to leave? Do you want them to be proud of dad? We can win a Rugby World Cup, and you can do. And he talked about it every day, winning a Rugby World Cup, and he got the team to a final. And if it wasn't, another day, who knows? So he'd done his bit. He absolutely did his bit, and he just said it would be incredibly hard. And because you're one of the older players, and you're not the best player, you've got to be the hardest worker. And he goes, I'll make sure of that. So he gave me plenty of opportunity overtly to work hard in front of the team. But I got on with it, and it was a pretty good apprenticeship in life, and it put me in good stead for whatever I do now. Very sort of appreciative of my time with him. Full of respect for the man.
Did it irritate you that it didn't go down unanimously well, that appointment?
Yeah. So again, because I've been around the team, I'd had Martin Johnson and Stuart Lancaster before that. I'd seen other captains announce, Chris Robshaw, who's we'd been together since we were 18, 19 as well, know him really well. You kind of see that captaincy announcement, and it was celebrated, go to his local rugby club, talk to the fam. It's like, whereas I got no sort of good press. I'm sure there was a few supporters there, but you only see the bad stuff, right? But I just knew I had to prove him wrong, and fortunately for me, the timing of Eddie, the sort of ingredients of the team was an unbelievable team who had been bridesmaids for probably 4 years in a row in the Six Nations, and it just needed tweaking. So Eddie inherited a really sort of good group of players, and I was fortunate enough to be sort of tip of the spear and whatnot. But I remember going to every press conference, and I sat like this with Dan Rohn from the BBC, and he knows Northampton, and he's got his nieces and nephews went to the local school, and where are you from, that place, and that pub there. So we sat like this, and then it's like, then it goes, right, 3, 2, 1, action. He goes, right, eye gouging, captaincy material. So he buttered me up, and for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, I had to face these questions every time I did a presser. Do you trust yourself as a captain? And I was like, it's not about me, it's about the team. And it was so hard and I built this sort of relationship with the media where I was so boring and professional. I didn't want to give them anything, so I stuck to the script, which isn't fun. You want to be yourself and be colourful, and but
that's your protective mode, weren't you?
Yeah, it's safer to just do that. And then I think the most sort of personally liberate, or that moment where we finally win that Six Nations Grand Slam, you walk into a room with your shoulders back and my head up, and I grew in confidence there, and I could look them all square in the eye and said, I'm not going to answer that question anymore because it's bullshit. Like, the team's winning, we just want, like, I've delivered, and it's not like I delivered, the team delivered, but I was a contributor to that. And I think the other thing of working with Eddie was the confidence he gave me in speech. He just goes and he doesn't say what he wants. He says what he wants, but it's all organised. It's not like he just
Okay.
fires stuff out there.
It's planned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very sort of structured like that. But Eddie just saying, yeah, we're going to go smash them this weekend. And I'm sat there going, that's music to my ears. Because we're playing big boy sport here. For 4 years under Stuart Lancaster, we're tiptoed around, competing, winning, being respectful, arrogant England. And it was so nice to hear Eddie go, we're going to smash them this weekend. Italy are going to get smashed.
Yeah.
And it was like, right, the boss has said it. So I'm saying to the boys, we've got to do it. And you're getting rid of words like hope, we hope to win or we want to win. It was like, we are doing everything we can to win this weekend. We will win. And the way we talk to each other in team meetings, we will win this weekend because we are preparing unbelievably well. We're so diligent. Look how hard he's working. Look how hard you're working. We will win this weekend. So I think just the small things of like how we communicated with each other, how we communicated to the press, it all became almost self-propelling. It's a far more positive way to speak. And Eddie sort of instilled that confidence in me as a captain. Like, we're playing international sport. Stop tiptoeing around it. Don't worry about offending people because you want to win. I just used want. But it's powerful, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've spoken about the one misdemeanor. Now this is where we come to the paradox.
We probably don't have enough time.
No, okay, I know, but this is where the Dylan Hartley paradox comes into play. Brilliant for Northampton, and yeah, obviously there were certain incidences, and it happened in England as well. But your captain,
England, I was okay.
Yeah,
to be fair, but I only had one sort of retrospective sighting for biting someone.
Yeah,
there's a bit of backstory to that. My daughter, who's like 9 now, she did computing the other day.
Oh no, did she search it out?
She Googled me. She said, Dad, I Googled you today. I was like, I mean, I can't remember the last time I Googled myself, but there's good and bad, and it depends how far you go back. And she said, you bit someone. I said, I leant into it and I said, if anyone puts their hand in your mouth, you bite it as well. It's like, but if we look at the bans, like I had 8 major bans. I'd say 50% of them are probably guilty of.
Did you say 50?
50%.
Okay.
Yeah. But then other ones I can like not justify, but I can probably explain with a bit of context. And then when I look at it over, because I had 2 years at Worcester, 14 years at Northampton, over 16 years, 8 bans for what I got out of the game on average. So I got banned once every 2 years for what I got out of playing the way I did and who I was. It was worth it. Yeah, this isn't justification, but
Dylan, it amounted to 60 weeks.
Yeah, but
which is like over a year.
Yeah, but context, right? So my first major ban was I got 6 months, but it was almost like we talk about like rugby went pro, and then in 2003 the academy system got all this funding. I feel like I was at the curve of the disciplinary as well.
Of setting this.
I remember first playing down in Bath. Like I got smacked in the face pretty overtly, and it was kind of like I remember watching Ben Cohen and Danny Grucott, England teammates, opposing teams, like fish hooking each other on the ground, and like refs just laughing and being like, "Come on now, lads!" I was on that sort of curve of we're not doing that anymore. Again, not justifying anything that I got banned for, but there's a bit of a cleanup of brand rugby, and you see on like Instagram or YouTube like old school rugby fights, and then people getting the talking to, and it's like go away and sort it out.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like red cards. You wouldn't do that. So I was in the sort of time where I suppose there's a bit of a cleanup, and again a little bit of 60 weeks. It's jaw dropping to hear that. But this was when there was no games in an off season. Whereas now, you get banned for games now. Whereas back then, off season was 4 weeks. Then there was pre-season. They didn't count a pre-season fixture as a game.
Right.
So I got banned. They had to ban me for time instead of games. And now that's changed. It's that people get banned.
Which sounds
games.
bigger.
Yeah. So exactly.
Yes.
So I reckon if I went through that, I could strip a good few weeks out of that 60 weeks. So again, context with everything, and things like I mean, these are going to.
Okay, let me ask you this: which of those eight do you regret the most?
I don't regret any of them.
No,
because they all lead to here. You know, if I didn't celebrate by putting my head on Jamie George's head in 2015, I mean, I wouldn't have missed that World Cup. I would have gone to the World Cup, and I would have been part of that. So my fingerprints would have been on that. I don't want to call it. It was a failure. And then Eddie wanted someone.
So you see that as a blessing in disguise?
Of course. I sat at home with my brand new daughter, first child, and then Eddie. I became England captain because I wasn't involved with that. So I'm very philosophical and sort of black and white about it. Like, we wouldn't be talking if I wouldn't be as interesting to you if I didn't have the bands.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, true. No,
wouldn't have a Time Sports Book of the Year.
But I'll be honest though. I mean, like, you know, even the story from New Zealand to England and captaining England as a Kiwi in itself is a story. The discipline is just an extra chapter or two to the story.
Right, there's things like I genuinely.
But you wouldn't do anything differently, is what you're saying.
No, but I understood. I built a rod for my own back with it. You know, if you, I don't want to go through them one by one, but you know, someone grabs you from behind, I swing an arm back and I elbow someone in the nose. Like I don't see that as too bad. You know, I did a swinging arm on Sean O'Brien, which was pretty terrible. When you look at it, it's not good, and you know, very guilty of that. But then again, I contextualise it in my own mind. You know, I'm the captain returning from England duty. My team's getting pumped at home to Leinster. Defensively, we're soft, we're poor. We need to, you know, make a stand. I come off the bench, and that's my first interaction in the game. So I've got all this going through my head. But to the layman, like to the casual person that doesn't play, and I wasn't a good tackler as well. So I can contextualise why things happen. And again, like, oh, geez, there's so many headlines that are going to come off the back of this. But like, if someone puts a hand in your mouth and is pulling your head, I don't even think you think to bite it. It just happens. So there's things like that. I can say, it just happened. I work with a psychologist, actually. He goes, you're just a caveman. You're in the jungle. Your action, whatever happens, your reaction, you know? So when you start to understand what you are and you're comfortable with that, and like I said, I remember playing on edge, on eggshells, not wanting to be the player that I was.
Taking the edge off.
I was great when I was right there. And guess what? Sometimes it went over. And I reckon what I got out of myself and those around me, because I wasn't a very good player, but I reckon when I was there playing like that, I brought a couple of people with me, and it was far more worth playing like that than just kind of meekly trying to get about a game and just hit your rucks, do your tackles, do your job. I loved it when I was right there. I loved like the big derby games where you knew it was on the line.
But did those ever come back to haunt you, undermine you as England captain? Did anyone ever bring it up to you?
No, I think people that play the game get it. And that environment was so hard and fast. It was like, if you weren't playing ball, it wasn't my job. Like, if you weren't doing what the team, we didn't have time for those sorts of things. Whatever your club and previous regimes, you know, club relationships and rivalries had affected. And you hear about the sort of famous ones within football, right? The Man U sort of clique and
Arsenal and whatever,
got London,
back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. So that happened a bit in rugby. You know, you said you're a big Leicester fan. You cover those finals.
Yeah.
Leicester dominated that team early days, rightly so. And when you've got that sort of density in a squad of one club, it does have an impact, an influence. So when Eddie sort of came in, we didn't have time for that. It was like, if you weren't playing ball, if you weren't sitting with those guys, or you weren't, and this happened in like analysis. You know, what are you guys doing at your club? What's working well? People like wouldn't share what works. They wouldn't want to give away their club. Whereas
secrets,
it was England first, club second. Whereas previous to that, it might have been like club first, go turn up, play a bit for England. So Eddie really changed that dynamic, where it was England first, and instead of meeting up a week before the Six Nations, Autumn Internationals, or a tour, it was almost Eddie bent the rules as well. He got us connected socially throughout the year. So he said, he couldn't tell players to come to the Holiday Inn on the, Junction 15 at Northampton, but he'd say, I'm going to be there this week if anyone wants to stop by for a coffee.
Oh, right.
And it's like Saracens players drove up, Leicester players drove down, and then we were getting this sort of leadership group round the table little and often. So we were constantly thinking about England, and he kept that front of mind with us. Really, and I just want to, he changed English rugby, the culture of how the teams operated now socially. And you've got to think Steve Borthwick is basically his apprentice. That's done good.
Yeah. I mean, that's fascinating. And clearly Eddie Jones had a massive impact on your development on and off the pitch, which I think it's fair to say. Okay, we're in the zone with former England Rugby Union captain Dylan Hartley. That's his backstory, if you will. In a moment, we're going to be looking forward to the Autumn Nation Series. Welcome back to In the Zone. With me, former England Rugby Union captain Dylan Hartley. Dylan, so we've got the Autumn Nation Series coming up. The big beast of the Southern Hemisphere, who you know well, of course, coming to these shores. So we've got New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, Eddie Jones's Japan. I mean, that's going to be a game at Twickenham. But it starts November the 2nd, England against New Zealand. Steve Borthwick's biggest test so far, do you think?
Yeah, I think a really good sort of, I suppose, marker to see where we're at, because it's not often you get, this is like a mini World Cup in my mind. If you could play it the other way around, Japan's his final game. So, but if you can back it up against these three big boys in Australia, South Africa and New Zealand, it's a real sort of marker as to where you're at. And you've got to manage things like injury, because all three games pre-Japan will be testing. Japan will be testing as well.
Do you think so?
I don't think Japan were quite where they are, and I'm interested to see what Eddie's impact on returning there has done. And this is the problem with what Eddie did with Japan at the start. They beat South Africa, then they start competing. People don't just think, oh, it's Japan anymore. Like, they're a proper team. So we always respect your opponent and approach and be diligent, but you always know you're going to win that game. Whereas now, it's like, Japan are a serious team. If you don't turn up on the day, you could be beaten. So I think it's Japan have made a rod for their own back in a way. Like, they're taken seriously now. So
there's a fearlessness about their rugby, but that's just the way Eddie Jones likes it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they've got a sort of a great balance of culture in terms of the kind of respectful, hierarchical. Like, they do what they're told. Like Eddie couldn't coach the English team or the South African team like he coached the Japanese team. Just in their culture, like, they'll, it just works. And then you drop in a little bit of sort of Kiwi, Aussie, South African influence into their game as well, because they attract, a lot of Southern Hemisphere and, how players move around the game now internationally, like myself. I think they've got a great balance to what they do.
So where are England right now? The expectations weren't particularly high going into the World Cup, and they didn't do too badly.
They over-delivered.
Exceeded.
In a way. Yeah. I think, Steve Borthwick inherits that squad a couple months out from Rugby World Cup. The right thing to do, and this is all retrospective, right, hindsight, and I could see what he was doing. And this is what Eddie did with the squad here. Go with tried and tested players, a few wily sort of old dogs to carry you through that. Because he couldn't just take a young team and get battered and just say it was a good experience. Funnily enough, they went, they competed. The old dogs, the wily, the experienced, the proper team got them through that World Cup. I think the most significant squad was the one post that World Cup, where we don't need these guys anymore. Let's think a little bit more long term. And then the sort of influence of Owen Farrell deciding to go abroad and that frees him up to choose a Marcus Smith or a Finn Smith, whoever you're choosing. It opens that sort of door, makes those decisions easier. Then you go tour New Zealand with that same squad. They didn't win their games, but they looked competitive at times. So I think this is the first sort of block of different opposition every week. Instead of a tour, you play someone back to back. It's kind of easy to analyse that and prepare for it. Whereas this, they're going to have to change or have variation in how they play because they can't play the same way against all those teams.
You talk about the two July tests, which they were competitive in, but ultimately failed in both. So what do they need to do to get over the line in that opener against the All Blacks?
You're asking a man that didn't watch the tests. I see sort of highlights packages and whatnot. But I think going to New Zealand and not winning, we call it black and white of it is failure, right? Because winning's what we're here to do and like we say, international sport. But going down there's not many teams that do go there and do that. I think it was a good marker for Steve to maybe understand where he's at with his squad, who can cut it at that level. Difficult place to tour, like I said. So I think you're only as good as your next game as well. Like those tests are quickly forgotten if they win this opener. Equally, I think Twickenham is expecting, because they're overtly playing a different brand of rugby, which I quite like. I think there's an influence of Harlequins, Northampton, Bath, very successful in the Premiership, and playing a way which is probably a little bit foreign to maybe English rugby fans. Foreign to me.
Yeah,
I quite like the turgid set piece kick battle. I love that because I was fit for purpose in that. But I think rugby at the moment's on this trend of you've got to play expansive rugby to win. But then you've got South Africa who kind of are the polar opposite of that. They do play rugby, but they play it in the right places at the right times. And they've got some individuals that can create something. You only need one moment a game. So I think England are a Kiwi coach that, we've got to play the way we've got this type of cattle. He referred to the players as cattle. Right. But you've got to play that way. So his top players are quite expansive, attacking style players. So he's playing a way to suit that instead of saying, this is how I want to play, and then trying to make Marcus Smith or George Furbank come into a team and play a different way to what they're playing at club. So I think they'll recognise what they're working with and trying to bring that to the international stage.
What would be a good tournament for England then?
I don't think it's unrealistic to say win all four. Home advantage. And there's different ways to spin this, and as a captain, you always got to think about this. With no bias, I'd say there and go New Zealand. If they were going to beat New Zealand, it would have been the first game in New Zealand before they'd had time to gel. So New Zealand sort of come here battle hardened. They've played a few tests now. They've got those sort of partnerships. They understand their tactics. They've been in those situations for the last few months. They're ready. Whereas England are coming together a week before. So I'd be saying that the Kiwis are tired. They'll be jet lagged. They're travelling into their season. But in reality, they're going to be well oiled. Same with Aussie, South Africa, Japan.
Yeah. It feels like South Africa are the ones to watch.
Yeah, but I think
they're behind Ireland in the world rankings as things stand. I don't know how much attention you give the world rankings, but are South Africa in a stronger position at the minute? I know Ireland have got a better head-to-head with South Africa.
Yeah.
But are South Africa the team to watch?
They're the team. They're the world champions. They're back-to-back world champs. Like, you can have all your world rankings in that, but when the champs come to town, they are the team. And I find it, I don't know how scheduling works and whatnot, but I think it's perfect for England to have them sort of third game. It gives England breathing space to get oiled, to get together, to get connected, to understand how they want to play. And it probably gives them 2 weeks of analysis as well of how they're going to attempt to unpick South Africa. Because if you're just going in first game, there's so much at hand. It's like the Six Nations, right? First game, doesn't matter how you play, just win. Second game, just win. The tournament goes for 2.5 months with the fallow weeks. You only need to have your biggest performance at the end of the tournament. And that's where you've had all the training time together. You understand how you want to play. So early on, it's all about winning. So the All Blacks game is just about winning. Then they've got another week training together. They can build on that. Australia in a transition, very dangerous, but again, winnable. But yeah, again, this is why it's probably the hardest time of year for England. It's just a different breed of rugby coming to town, and to try and prepare and analyse and play it is back-to-back 4 weeks in a row. Six Nations, you have 2 games, week off, 1 game, week off, 2 games. So there's all this sort of downtime.
This is quite condensed.
This is 4 games in a row. This is
hard.
big. Yeah, this is where you got your squad's got to, and then training. It's not the games that take the toll. It's like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday training. It's like you don't have that much time on the field when you think about it.
And talking of squads, no Alex Mitchell, George Ford, Owen Farrell.
Yeah.
How big a absence, or how will that affect England?
Yeah, huge absences, huge. But like we talked about before, unless you create that void for someone to step into, you'll never know. And I feel like there's been we've not talked about Owen Farrell, which is, I think, fantastic for him, fantastic for English rugby, fantastic for Marcus and Finn Smith. It's like the big machine, just the same story, or the narrative is the same. It's the same with my captaincy. It's like you play, and then it's like he's had enough. He needs to go. Dylan needs to go. And it's like we need Owen in there. And it's like Owen comes in. He does a really good job. And then it's like Owen needs to go now. It's the same thing. It's the same thing with the English fly half. Like we need Johnny Wilkinson back. It's like it's going to be the same. It's going to be the age-old debate.
Yeah.
And we just got to understand that there's a conveyor belt of time, and people have their time in the sun, and then at some point you've just got to say thanks for your time and move on. So whilst big gaps have been left, Courtney Lawes, not mentioned that name. What an absolute void that is. It's like a 7-foot void. But we're not talking about that because I think it's exciting. We've got other players coming. So
you certainly whetted the appetite. Should be a decent competition.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Dylan, thank you so much for your company. I know you've got to head back, look after the 3-week-old, but also stop the internet searches on those computers.
Oh, yeah.
Of Dylan Hartley's past.
Jeez.
For the 9-year-old, she doesn't want to be digging too deeply.
Safe search, get my name banned on there.
Hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, hopefully you don't make too many kind of clips and headlines out of this.
No.
Let's focus on the positive stuff, yeah?
No headlines from this.
Okay,
Just,
thank you.
Maybe 1 or 2. That's it from us. Dylan Hartley's been in the zone, courtesy of Gambling Zone, your trusted online gambling comparison site. Don't forget you can see all the best football offers at gamblingzone.com/UK/betting. Then don't forget you can find all the episodes on Spotify and on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Manish Bhasin. I'll see you next time.